just show you a quick circuit in the Cessna 150 and actually just show you what is actually involved in pre-flight checks, but also what a circuit is all about and what we're trying to achieve from it. So currently on the video we are currently taxiing across runway 24. Now we can see in the distance that there is an aircraft currently that's just at the hold, and we're going across the runway. We taxi over 24 and actually say over the radio your call sign crossing 24, and this makes sure that we have a good situational awareness of not just yourself but the other people that are around us. And this now is the power checks area for runway 24. We call this the engine run-up area, and what basically would be consisted here is we'd be checking that the engines are in the normal parameters, but also this is the place that we're going to be checking for the engine to cut out as well, and making sure that the engine is running efficiently. And with the checks, what we'd be looking for is we'd set the throttle to 1700 RPM and we'd cycle the magnetos in the engine. So these are little sparks that actually ignite the fuel with the magnetos, and we'd cycle left and right, making sure that we have a correct drop in the RPM. Carburetor heat is tested, the ammeter as well, making sure that that's charging, and again the temperatures and pressures are all in the normals. Suction gauge, we check that as well, that the correct suction indicator on the Cessna 150 is correct, and dropping the throttle back to idle as well, just to check we have no undue vibration and making sure that the engine doesn't cut out. So that's really important on the power checks of the aircraft. It's always good to get these checks done. Probably we have a run-up area out the way of other aircraft as well. It's very important to make sure that there's nobody else around you when you're doing the run-ups. We're now on the way to taxi to the hold of 24, and what we'd be doing now is we'd be conducting the before takeoff checklist, making sure before we take off that everything is ready to go. As you can see on the video, there's that aircraft again. He's ready to go just there. He'll have done his before takeoff checks, and he is currently at the holding point at the moment. So we'd make sure we'd stop behind him, but give him plenty of distance as well. We don't want to be too close behind him. It's not like being on the motorway when bumper to bumper. Okay, so at this point we'd do the before takeoff checklist. We'd be ensuring that the engine mixture is rich, the throttle friction is adjusted, our carburetor heat is cold, flaps, it would be 10 degrees on this airfield. We'd check that the lights would be on as well. Now we wouldn't put the landing light on until we enter the runway, but we'd need to make sure that the taxi light is currently on still. Transponder would be to on and out after this point, and then also we'd need to check the approach is clear. And a good example, there's that aircraft just landing now, and when you sat here at the hold, if the checks are done, you wanted to be looking around, making sure that your situational awareness is always on top of your game, but also making sure that as we're sat here, we're ready for departure. So we're going to watch this little Cessna in front of us taxi out, and then it will be our turn next. So at this point what we can see is that we're currently holding and we're now taxiing on to the runway. We're checking that the approach is clear. At this point the transponder would go on, your landing lights would also go on, and again you're keeping a very, very good lookout. We use as much runway available at Neverthorpe. The problem is it's a very short runway, you need as much runway as possible. We advance takeoff first, check the T's and P's are in the normal, and the airspeed is alive. As we're going down, we're scanning the runway, making sure that there's no obstacles that enter the runway at any time. As we can see, there is an aircraft taxiing on the left. Applying slight back pressure at short field, we now start to lift off. And as we can see here, as we are climbing away, it is a very hot day, so we're making sure as we've made that rotation that we're not being too aggressive on the pullback, but allowing the aircraft to accelerate. Now, as we're climbing away, we're waiting for about 300 feet. So 300 feet, the flaps are going to be considered to go up. And also, as we climb away, the landing light will also go off at 1,000 feet. Okay. And as we continue the climb, we've got to make sure, again, the circuit on a busy day, usually on a sunny day like today, very, very active. And you never can just presume, listening on the radio, that you have a full painted picture of what's going off around you. And as we're in the climb, piston engines, you have to remember they're working as hard as possible. You're monitoring the T's and P's in the climb, but also keeping a good visual lookout of what's going off around you. So, things to consider here is you can see the fields below. If the engine was to cut now, we'd probably consider going for that field there. So you are considering a worst case scenario of departure. If my engine was to go now, where would I be going? We should never turn back to the field unless there's just no option at all, but the main option is to choose an available field. We're now turning crosswind, and as we depart out, what we can see is that the circuit height at Neverthorpe is 800 feet, so we'll be levelling out, we bring our power back, and we never leave full throttle on. And at this point as well, we're checking the downwind leg, as that can be a very, very active leg as well, keeping a good lookout on the radio. Now, we're going to keep progressing, and then eventually we will turn downwind and we'll call our call sign, and also that we are downwind. And also making sure that you let the other people know of your intentions. What are you doing on downwind? Are you downwind high? Are you going into the overheads? Are you going to land? Are you going to do a low approach and go around? We have to remember to keep everybody aware of what you are doing. Okay? We're now entering the downwind position of the circuit leg. At this point as well, we'd be considering doing our checklist before landing. Okay? So what we're going to want to check is the gas on, is the mixture rich? Okay? Undercarriage. Now, if you're using an aircraft with retractable undercarriage, you'd be considering the undercarriage as well, but also on the aircraft that we are flying is fixed. So at that point, what we would do is we'd check and press the pedals to make sure there is no pressure in the pedals. Also as well, we check that the prop is where it needs to be. Now, this is a fixed pitch prop, so we wouldn't need to worry about that there. Flaps as required. Seatbelts, checking the security of your passengers, but also yourself. Is everybody strapped in? Very, very important. And checking that the doors are all secure as well. The last thing you want is the door opening on landing. And also switches. You'd consider that landing light to go back on. You turn the landing light off on the departure, but you'll be turning the landing light back on. Now, at this point, when these checks are satisfied and complete, we are now starting to turn for base. We'd bring the power back, but prior to that, the carburetor heat would be put on, and then we'd bring the throttle back, and we'd be aiming in the circuit to the descent and aiming to turn final approach by 500 feet. Now, on a hot, warm, moist day, these can be very, very good conditions for carburetor icing, so we must make sure that carburetor goes on and you're checking the engine as well. Again, if you treat the aircraft with respect, it'll treat you with respect. We'll keep going in for the approach, keeping a little bit of an eye on the windsock and also final approach traffic. Again, remember, final approach, very active. These sort of airfields, there could be non-radio aircraft we have to consider as well. But again, when we do turn final approach, we will then be calling finals. And at this point, you'd call sign, finals, runway 24, and intentions, in this case, to land. Again, going down the approach, you're making sure at this final point that, again, the mixture is in. Again, the carburetor heat is out, but you put the carburetor heat away just at the final point of the approach in case of a go-around, so we do require that power. The carburetor heat is still open, and you apply full power with the warm moisture, you will not get the required power for go-around. On the approach, we can see a group of trees below, making sure that we're not too low, and making sure that we don't get any drop in our flight path. They can get very turbulent, those trees. Final check of the runway. We are coming into land, aircraft on the right, and over the road, applying a bit of back pressure, and then eventually flaring out and landing on the runway. And there you go. So that there has been a little bit of an insight to, what it's like to do a quick circuit in a light aircraft. At this point, what we'd be doing is, we'd be coming off the runway on a busy day. You want to make sure you vacate the runway as quickly as possible. At this point, you'd be making sure that everybody is situationally aware. You'd call your call sign and you're vacating the runway. At this point, you'd conduct the after landing checklist, and you make sure the carburetor heat is away, the flaps are up, and your transponder is to stand by. Okay. So thanks for watching another one of my videos. That was a quick little bit of an insight to what's it all about in the circuit, and I hope you enjoyed that. Please give it a like, subscribe, and more of these videos will be coming. So again, thank you very much, and all the best.